and good evening and welcome. This is Steve Fryer, and you're listening to the Expanding Light Radio Show. And with me tonight is Tanis Helliwell, who is the author of the book Decoding Destiny, Keys to Mankind's Spiritual Evolution, and Summer with the Leprechauns. And tonight we'll be talking about the new book, Summer with the Leprechauns. Tanis is a student and teacher of the Inner Mysteries, and she lives near Vancouver, Canada. In addition to her workshops and so forth, she has been a consultant to businesses, universities, and government. And I think that makes her well qualified to write this true story, Summer with the Leprechauns. Tanis, are you there?
I am.
Well, welcome to the Expanding Light.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
You know, I've been very excited about this book for quite some time, ever since I read it.
Why's that?
Well, ever since I read another similar book called The Elves of Lily Hill Farm, which I got very involved with, and the woman who wrote that is right over here in Michigan, nearby, so I had a chance to meet with her a couple times.
Did you go and see the elves?
Well, yes, we did. I'm not too good at seeing them, but some of my friends are much better at it, so...
Oh, that's good.
We did have a conversation, and we recorded it, and got it on video, and so forth. So, naturally, my inclination is to find out more about the elemental kingdom, and when I saw your book at the ABA last year, I was very excited, and I couldn't wait till it came out, so I finally got a copy, and I've been reading it, and, I should say to the listeners, this is billed as a true story that you, well, why don't you tell the story? You went to Ireland, right? And you
I did.
met some elves.
It happened to me 12 years ago now that I went on retreat to a remote part of Ireland, the west coast of Ireland, and I was going for the whole summer to meditate and just to reflect on the inner meaning of life.
To chill out.
Yes. And I walked into the cottage, and I hadn't seen it before I rented it. I'd rented it from Canada. And when I walked in, there was a leprechaun family right there. And I was shocked immedately that had happened. And the male leprechaun spoke to me and told me that they, as a family, had been living there for 100 years, and that his particular study was humans, and that he wanted to work with me and other humans to create a better world. And so he was overjoyed that I was there, but he was a little obstreperous, too. You know, he's a little bit, so are you up for this kind of thing?
Well, let's take a step back here a second. You know, you are a consultant for, I understand, some very large corporations and government agencies and so forth. And, I'm wondering, how have they taken, or have they heard about the fact that you communicate with leprechauns and elementals? How do they respond to that?
Well, very well, actually. I don't tell every single workshop or every single client that I do these kinds of things.
But someone might find the book and connect your name.
Yes, and in some workshops I actually bring the books, and I bring my first book, Decoding Destiny, and so over the years I found that I've had sort of three reactions. One is, oh my, this is really exciting. I can hardly wait to read more and hear more about it because I've enjoyed what you've done with us so far, Tanis. That's one reaction. The second reaction is, my God, this woman's from hell, and we have to protect ourselves against her. And the other is just sort of neutral.
Well, this is
like it's not here nor there. So, I've had my share of challenges about being a spiritual person, teaching in organizational settings, for sure.
Now this story reads like a Disney movie script, Well,
I hope that Disney takes it.
Well, it does read like a movie, and I could, as I'm reading the book, I'm seeing a movie here. I saw a movie this summer about faeries, which was about that famous story in England in 1913 or something. Have you heard about that?
I have heard about it, but I haven't seen the movie.
About two young girls who supposedly see fairies and take a picture, and then who's that famous investigator? The Sherlock Holmes.
Oliver, was it Oliver?
The guy that wrote Sherlock Holmes. he came over with Harry Houdini and investigated, supposedly, and they did
I think it's Oliver Wendell Holmes, isn't it?
No.
Sorry.
Think of it, but the movie was very well done, and the special effects were very realistic and very incredible. So while I'm reading your book, I'm seeing this wonderful, film unfold, and I start to tell my friends who are, many of whom are fairly metaphysically oriented, about, my experience with elves in Michigan, and now this book about leprechauns, and I usually get kind of a blank stare or a look that says, "Come on, man, you can't be serious. Elves? I mean, people are more willing to accept UFOs today, aren't they? Wouldn't you say?"
Well, that's why I waited for 10 years to write the book. The leprechaun said to me that there's no sense putting the book out for 10 years because no one would believe it. And if you think about it, 10 years ago people didn't believe in angels, and now how many people believe in angels?
But it seems like, this is something that goes way back, and it's part of folklore, so people sort of pass it off as just, fairy tale stuff. And here you are saying you talk to leprechauns.
Well, I think it's all part of our disconnection with the earth. That angels are of the heavens, if you like, of the spirit realm,
right.
and elementals are of the earth realm. Both are unseen beings, but both, impact on our world. And I think that it's a whole part of we are more willing to believe that there are spiritual beings, as in God,
right.
than we
Angels.
are willing to believe that we actually are living on a living being, the earth.
And would you say that these elementals, in your book you talk about different elementals, but mostly the leprechauns, you're saying these are spiritual beings too, are you not?
Well, just like we're spiritual beings, I believe that we're both a combination of spirit and matter, if you like.
Okay.
As are the elementals. Like, that's the race. We're humans, and the leprechaun belongs to a race called elementals, of which faeries and elves, gnomes, goblins are also denizens.
What do you call them, denizens?
Well, they're just inhabitants
right.
of that realm.
Well, what does it take to see these? And I see in your bio that evidently you've been able to see and communicate with, the spiritual realms since you were a little girl.
It's true, I have.
So why were you shocked when you walked into this cottage in Ireland and you saw leprechauns sitting on a couch?
Well, I hadn't expected it. I had really expected that I was just going to have a quiet, peaceful summer. And up until that actually had happened to me, I had not been working with the elementals.
So you had a long gap.
Well, I've been working more with other spiritual beings, if you like, with spiritual beings, but not earth beings.
Okay.
I had contact with elementals when I was a child, as many people do.
Sure.
These imaginary friends that kids have are often elemental beings.
I could tell you about my own children who are now 15 and 16. Two boys, when they were very young, they had an imaginary friend who they would look at and say, "He's right behind you, Dad," and so forth. Or he's following us behind the car.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I tried to keep that going as long as I could, and I think they were about 8 when they
Can they still remember that
vaguely,
elementary friend?
Vaguely, if I bring it up.
Because my mother, just a few years ago, said to me that, she said, "Well, you remember your imaginary friend, Tanis." And do you know, I had forgotten. And I think that this happens to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. They forget their imaginary friend.
So what is the value of humanity learning to communicate with elementals, Tanis?
Well, the elementals create the form of the world. They create the trees and the plants that we eat. They create the flowers. They create the minerals. They create the form of the earth. The angels actually imbue the form with life, but they don't create the form. It's the elementals that create the form. So without the elementals, what would we eat?
Well, I'm curious how this works. How does this work? Because, I'm a metaphysician, and many of my friends are too. And we believe that your thought creates your reality.
And that's what they work with.
But no one ever told us that there were elementals as middlemen.
Yes. They are the middleman. The Fox tribe in the States talk about, we've got two souls. We've got the body soul and we have the divine soul. And I have, in my book, as you know, I talk about the body elemental. And the body elemental is the body soul. So when we first come into this existence, we come in with this body soul that creates our body from a blueprint that it's given. And it has our genetic structure in it. It has our ancestry in it. If people believe in other lives, I don't know if they do, but if they do, it carries over from memories from other lives as well. And that body is built for us. And then our divine soul usually doesn't come in until month sort of 7 to when we're born. And then that's when we've got both things together. Now, I used to be a therapist, Steve. I was a therapist for 16 years in Toronto. And my specialty was what they are now calling transpersonal psychology, but that didn't exist when I was a therapist. But basically what it means is I was helping people to decide what they were here to do in life. And in doing this, I used to take people by guided visualizations to find out their purpose in life. And interestingly enough, whenever I'd ask them when they actually entered their body, they would say 7 months to a year.
Yeah, I believe that.
Like 7 months to 9 months, pardon me. So what's building the body meantime? It's the body soul. It's the body elemental. So if we want to actually become friends with our body elemental, if you like, we can program it, get its assistance to create health instead of disease.
Have you seen this work?
I have. I've done it on myself.
Did you have a problem?
I've had several problems.
Okay, maybe you could give us an example.
Well, for example, I used to have something in my female area, in my uterus, growths, and the man that I lived with at the time was an obstetrician. So, this went on for some time that we knew I had this, and finally he said, well, you should really go to a separate doctor to have this seen to, and because you can't treat your own,
Right.
And so I said, well, what would be the treatment if I in fact have this? And he said, well, surgery.
Sure. That's what they all do.
Yes. And so I thought, no, that's not what I want. So then I looked at, well, why did I have those growths? And I realized that I'd never had children of my own. And although I had 3 stepkids, my body was sad that it never had children because it's a woman's body. So it was growing something inappropriately in the womb.
Interesting.
So as soon as I realized that, I allowed my body to go through the grieving of what it had never had. And then I asked my body elemental if it would please now release that. And then, guess what? By the time I got to the other doctor for the treatment, I was perfect. And that's just one example.
That's all it took.
That's all it took.
Well, that's pretty major, but that's interesting. That's powerful. Well, we should talk a little bit more about the elementals. I mean, this is very advanced stuff, and you save that toward for the later chapters in your book about the body elemental. I think most people are not ready for that. They're probably more interested right now to find out.
In the leprechauns.
Yeah, let's find out about leprechauns. What do leprechauns do? What's their purpose?
Well, when all elementals, when they come into existence, they don't go through the struggle that humans do about who am I and what do I want to do with my life.
Some of us are still asking those questions.
Some of us are still questioning after it. But what they do is they know what they are to do because they're born into a certain caste, if you like. And so there's more the royal caste, which are more the elves, and then there are the beings that work more with the earth element, which are more the trolls, and then there are the faeries that are working with the flowers, and the leprechauns actually are craftspeople. So
they make
in
things.
the stories about leprechauns making shoes and things like that, well, they actually are craftspeople.
Now, why do they have to make things if they're... Let's talk about which dimension they're in here. Now, when you see them, are you seeing into the fourth dimension, or are they coming into the third dimension and manifesting? How does that work?
No, I actually see them in the fourth dimension. That would mean that if you were in front of me and I was seeing them, you may not see them. Now, people have told me that people who have what in the Ireland they call second sight.
Second sight, right.
They have told me that they've seen my friend as well, and they know when he's around me. And he has made things happen in the third dimension to prove to people that he is in fact there. And these things I can go into some of those later on if you like.
Well, I'd like to know now.
Okay.
What kind of things do they do to get your attention?
Okay, example. I took a group of people. I take people on tours to sacred sites of the world, and I've done this for about 14 years. And last year, I took a group down to New Zealand, and we were doing a festival of sharing where we invited all the people from New Zealand as well, and some Maori elders came to teach us. And one day, I was out in the forest, and I met the elementals there. And my leprechaun friend had actually come with me to New Zealand to meet the elementals of New Zealand. And these elementals said that they wanted to be part of the Festival of Sharing and would we please come back in 2 days and bring the whole group back, and they would prove to the group that they were there. So in 2 days, I took everybody back, and there were acres and acres of mushrooms. Yellow ones and purple ones and brown ones and white ones and big ones and small ones. And we had all these New Zealand people said that they had never seen anything like this before, ever. We had a botanist who was part of the Festival of Sharing, a New Zealand botanist, and he said there's a very rare fungus that comes to be when it's born in the casing of a cicada, and that the place was littered with them. So that's how they can that's just one example of how they can actually materialize things to prove things to people.
Well, I'd like to know more about the, how do you work with them now, to manifest good, let's say, on the earth? Well,
this is a wonderful conversation. This is a wonderful opportunity to do it right now here, isn't it, Steve?
Why not?
You and I are having this conversation so that we're being able to do this. It's terrific, and and I've been blessed with how many. Like today, I did a radio interview in New Zealand, and 2 days ago, I did a radio interview for London, England, and so. And I'm not doing anything to get this to happen. I'm just sitting here in Vancouver.
Well, I have to say, when I first saw this book about the elves a year or so ago, I had no interest in elves. I'm very metaphysical, but I just didn't have any interest in elves. And all of a sudden, I'm calling this woman and, I'm asking for an interview, and I just couldn't believe it myself.
Couldn't believe you were doing it.
But I'm so tuned, I'm so ready for it. I don't know if it's just me or if it's the world ready or a combination, but I feel it's my duty to help, put this out there.
Oh, there you see. Well, this is a good example of how you're feeling called to do something. And this is what people continually tell me. That I'm getting emails and letters and cards, and it's their feeling that they want to do something personally in their lives to make a difference. And that is the whole message that the leprechaun was trying to convey, that they want to work with humans to create a better world. And that's happening.
Well, what are some of the, maybe we can talk about some of the things people can do later in the show. But I really want to get into this trip to Ireland. First of all, are you Irish?
Irish descent.
You're Irish descent, okay. And my other friend, I think she's got some Irish in her too, so I'm wondering if these elementals tend to appear to the Irish mostly, especially the elves and the leprechauns.
Well, perhaps so, but they appeared to me there first. So even though I had the right blood, if you like, they still waited until I got over there for it to happen.
Now, it seems when you were there, you had people coming and going into the cottage, helping build the fire and so forth. And did you get a sense that some of the people that lived around there kind of knew what was going on and were just sort of holding their tongue and internally laughing at your experience?
Yes, and not always holding their tongue. I remember the first day when I went down to the village to get some supplies in, and I went into, I had 3 pubs in the village and 1 shop, to buy groceries, and I went into the shop and I bought my groceries, and I was at the checkout counter, and the man who was the owner of the shop said to me, "So are you a holidaymaker?" Well, that's what they call a person in Ireland who's on vacation.
Right.
I said no, and he said, "So where are you staying then?" And I said, "Well, I've rented the Davidson cottage." And he said, "Did you not know it's haunted?" And I said, "Oh," because I thought I best not mention that I had already had my experience. And so anyway, I said, "Oh," and he said, and I said, "Haunted by what?" He said, "Oh, the little people." He said, "In fact, you're living on a whole haunted lane." So it was like, it was common knowledge in the town that that it was haunted.
Do you feel that you had a special experience with these leprechauns, or do you think any of the local people had such a special experience, or they're just kind of just generally aware and they leave them alone?
I think that mostly in Ireland now on the West Coast, we're talking about Achill Island, County Mayo, and I've read, since this has happened to me, I've read stories about sightings and true stories and whatever. And a lot of them happen on the West Coast. Because it's a more remote area, the people are closer to the land, it's more old-fashioned and traditional. And so I think people, you see, the elementals go where people still believe in them.
I see.
And so I think that's why they were still there.
So, would you say that these elementals exist in the United States as well?
Yes. Oh, yes. In fact, all over. When I was in New Zealand, there was a Maori elder who came to our workshop. Her name is Rose Perret, and she's considered the second most senior Maori. They have a matriarchal society, and she said to me, "I know you work with the elementals, what you call the elementals," and she said, "and we call them the children of the mist." And she said, "After the tour ends, they're asking me to ask you to come up to my homeland, where they are the strongest, because they want to meet you." And I did that.
Tanis, we have to take a break here.
Oh, sure.
We're speaking with Tanis Helliwell, author of Summer with the Leprechauns, A True Story. And I'm Steve Fryer. You're listening to The Expanding Light. And we'll be right back right after these messages. Stay with us. This is Steve Fryer, and you're listening to The Expanding Light. And with me tonight is author of the book Summer with the Leprechauns, A True Story by Tanis Helliwell. In the front of the book, I love this quote, Tanis. This is a great quote. If you think that leprechauns are no more than quaint inhabitants of an antiquated Irish fantasy, think again. Tanis Helliwell engages the little people in an important cross-dimensional exchange and documents their influence, their influential presence here and now, while offering all the delights of a real-life fairy tale. Summer with the Leprechauns poses some ominous considerations for our planetary future. Now, why is that important for us to be thinking about our planetary future in connection with the leprechauns, Tanis?
Well, because the elementals are the ones who are the caretakers of nature, if you like, and all natural life here on the planet. And without elementals, we wouldn't have any trees or plants. And I think it's because we've been disconnected to the earth and really the earth itself, that we're in such dire straits right now.
Now, you've had a lot of in-depth discussion with these leprechauns and elementals. What are they saying is the problem right now? What is our biggest challenge as humanity? Do they see us surviving?
Well, we never actually got into that. One of the things that we did get into, which relates to this, is that there was always a caste system for elementals, and you couldn't be other than what you'd been born to be. But 100 years ago, because of what's going on in the world and our killing off of the habitat, not only for humans but also for elementals, a group of elementals actually asked the greater ones, the powers that be over this entire planet, if they could become creators like humans are supposed to be. And so there's a group of elementals who are now trying to become creators on the planet. Humans right now are the only creators on this planet. So this is another reason they want to work with humans, because then they will become they'll have free will quicker if they do that. See, humans are the only ones that have free will.
Why is that? Why do humans have free will?
Well, because we're gods in the making. We really are. We're creators in the making, and we're like in kindergarten here. We don't know how to create life, but we know how to modify life that already exists, and that's what we're doing with genetic splicing and all this kind of thing.
So do you think
and we also know how to destroy life.
Do you think it's okay for us to experiment with gene splicing and genetic manipulations?
Well, I think that it is part of the creative process, and the problem is that it's been disconnected from the sacredness of nature and spiritual law. That's
why people seem to be freaking out about that right now. Even Bill Clinton seems to be abhorred by that prospect.
Yes, I mean it's an immense responsibility that we have here, and it's almost as if our technology and our intelligence is running ahead of where we are spiritually and physically to be able to actually, do these things and live with the consequences of them.
In your book, Summer with the Leprechauns, you describe in one chapter or so that you went out on a date.
Yes.
What was that like?
Yes. Well, you don't think it was going to be all work and no play over there, did you, Steve?
It was quite comical. another movie.
Yes,
scene.
I went out on a date with my leprechaun friend to the local hotel where we had a lovely dinner. He ate all the vegetarian entrees and I ate the fish. You see, yes, he doesn't eat meat.
Understandable.
As he would say it, I don't eat things that have once lived. And so I said, well, what about An apple. It
Yeah.
once lived. And they said, yes, but, I didn't kill the tree to have the apple.
Oh, good point.
Mm-hmm.
I always have that argument with my vegetarian friends, saying that, in some of that research that Peter Tompkins documented years ago, they saw that plants have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And you could measure them with lie detectors and things like that they could sense and pick up on our emotions and especially fear and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that plants have feelings too, and we shouldn't kill them. So what should we eat? Should we be breatharians?
Well, I think that our vibration is definitely altering, and we are becoming lighter. I remember years ago I was doing a talk for it was in a corporate setting, and I was talking about how people were eating lighter than they once had, and that we weren't eating as much meat as we had, and eating more chicken and fish. And the person following me was actually the buyer for meat of the whole supermarket chain, and he got up after I finished and actually gave the stats to show that.
It was true.
It was true. Totally true.
Maybe that's why the Oprah's in court down in Texas, that the whole beef industry is shaking in their boots, so to speak. So they're lashing out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You heard about that, right? No,
I haven't.
Oprah Winfrey on her show, I guess last summer, had mentioned that she was not going to eat any more meat, that she was, putting it out of her diet or whatever. And the beef industry took her to court saying that it hurt their business. Some beef farmers or whatever cattlemen lost over $1 million in one day, because of the drop in consumption.
She's a gutsy lady.
She sure is.
She really is.
Now, I could say, I don't eat broccoli like George Bush, and I wouldn't get in any trouble over that.
Yeah, you see, there you go.
But I like broccoli, so I wouldn't say that. Now, I've been researching this topic of elementals for quite some time, and I know there are many other books, such as there's a man named Rudolf Steiner, I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
One of the greatest minds of the 20th century, who documented the lives of elementals of all forms. Mm-hmm. And so he gives it credibility, but we don't study that in school, so no one knows about it. And
he's the person who created the whole Waldorf system of education.
The Waldorf schools, that's correct.
Yeah, that was Steiner.
Right, and then there's a man named Jeffrey Hodson, and quite a few others, including Peter Tompkins, whose new book is called The Secret Life of Nature, and he really gets into a discussion, and he paints a good historical picture and draws from all of these earlier researchers, and talks about fairies and so forth as well. Now, I was wondering if does it take a special ability to actually see leprechauns and elementals, and do you have any methodology here for us that might help?
Well, I think that when we say see, there's different ways we can see, if you like. There's actual having clairvoyance, but some people have clairaudience. They actually hear messages. Right,
that's what happened to my friend Penny Kelly. Okay. She heard them first a couple of times, and then I think the third visit to her farm, she started to see them.
Yes.
So she said at first it sounded like a chorus, and it evolved out of that. So, yeah, you're quite right about that.
And I think that some people hear like the inner voices anyway, and they know when they should open up and talk about something or when they should keep their mouth shut. Like they have that sense. So,
but don't you think we're programmed not to listen to these inner voices?
Well,
that people get locked up for that, so
well, maybe they do, but I think starting to open to listening is good. And then the other sense, which is very important, is feeling. It's having a feeling of something. I know my stepson, one of my stepsons, he is not clairvoyant, but whenever I'd be sitting at the dinner table or whatever, he calls my leprechaun friend Leppy. And he would say, well, Leppy's behind me to the right about 5 feet now, isn't he?
Leppy.
And he would be at like, by and my stepson would be like facing me, and this is behind him,
right.
you know? But he could feel him.
Wow.
So
some
people can become more, attuned that way. I also think that you can work with what the elementals actually do. I mean, could we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
Okay, because in the book, the elementals actually gave 10 guidelines for humans to work with elementals, and I think that those are really important.
Let me see if I can
and the
find
first one is to believe in elementals, because the more we believe in them, the stronger their presence becomes. It's almost like our belief gives them energy, and then they become stronger and better able to influence our material world. The second one is to be happy and enthusiastic. Elementals are not attracted to depressed, sad humans. And really, we have to have a lot more joy in our life, don't you think? And they're beings of play.
They like to play.
They like to play. They like to have fun. And so that's what they're talking about there. The third one is to go to healthy places in nature as often as possible. And, that means like walking in forests, walking on seashores, listening to birds, sitting by brooks. And as we're in these natural places, our vibration will be cleansed, our aura will be cleansed, and we will just automatically start entering more of a harmonious resonance where they can work with us. They're already working with us, and that's why we enter that more peaceful way of being, because they're working with us.
Well, I'm wondering, why don't these, say, loggers who are cutting down redwood trees feel the presence of elementals?
They're blocked.
They probably wouldn't do it if they weren't blocked.
No, they wouldn't do it if
or they'd be more careful,
Yeah, it's like how does a surgeon doing brain surgery and having fatalities of like 50% in serious cases get up to do surgery?
They're
they
totally
have
blocked.
to seal themselves. They have to block themselves.
They're blocking their feelings.
They have to block their feelings and do it as, a mechanistic operation.
I could attest to that. A few years ago, many years ago, when I first moved to Chicago, I had a roommate who was a surgeon. He was a med student, and I could attest he had no feelings. I mean, he was totally out for himself, and he's just totally cut off from the emotions in so many ways. I could see why he could be a good surgeon.
Yes. Now that's not to say, I sure don't want to, that everybody listens to this, that I sort of become the Oprah Winfrey case of beef against surgeons.
Well, they deserve a good hit, don't you think?
Well, I don't think that all surgeons are blocked.
No, okay.
But I'm just saying that there's definitely a tendency, if you're going to have to face death, and under your own hand, to block yourself from the human element and see that as Joe or Sally that you're actually operating on. Because in some way, if they start thinking in terms of Joe and Sally, they may not do as good a job in the surgery.
That's true. Well, hopefully we could avoid surgery by having the right thoughts.
Well, this is it. This is it.
I always felt that if I were ever to get really seriously ill, I would go to nature. I would find myself a nice grassy field somewhere, and probably a flower, a wildflower field, and stare at the beautiful sky, the blue sky, and the green grass and the flowers, and just take it all in. And I would do that for a long time. Just ponder nature.
That's right, and the whole thing is to start, like for all of us, to start working this into our daily.
Before we get sick.
Before we get ill. If we start working this into our daily now, we probably won't get ill.
So in your point number 4, you do say you should appreciate the beauty in nature.
Exactly. And if we appreciate the beauty, that elementals are going to be attracted to us. And then point number 5 goes on to with that whole idea, and to cooperate and create with nature. You know, and that's by planting trees and growing flowers and feeding the birds, any way that people feel that they are getting more in contact with nature.
I've heard it, a rule of thumb would be for every tree we cut, we should plant at least 2.
That's a great one.
And some cities have adopted that ordinance, believe it or not. That's already been started.
That's wonderful.
Not too many, not enough yet.
No, but I'm glad to hear that that is happening. A friend of mine actually is a logger, and I've been up staying with them. I'm writing another book right now, and I've been up on retreat staying with them. And he's a third-generation logger, and he just won the award in British Columbia for the best self-managed woodlot. And he's had this woodlot for 18 years, and there are more trees on it now than when he started cutting.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
You know, there's an Indian tribe in Wisconsin that was documented on a film I saw. You know, the 7 habits of highly effective people. Who is that guy? He went there
Stephen Covey.
Yeah, he went there and showed this how they manage these trees for, you know, they're thinking 30 and 40 years ahead for their, you know, their grandsons to have, you know, to take over the management. So they're very selective and they're very successful. And I'm sure at some level they're working with elementals too.
Oh, I'm sure that they are. And so, like, I don't want to cast aspersion on any profession, really, and say, well, you know, these people are not working with nature, because I think, you know, you can look in any profession and you can see that the people are doing something within that profession. I call it walking the high road. Right.
Are they being conscious? Or are they being unconscious and greedy and self-centered? And I think most of the world is in the second category, unfortunately, and that's why we're in this trouble we're in.
Yes. However, it's changing. You know, I think people are starting to wake up to this.
We're speaking with Tanis Helliwell, author of Summer with the Leprechauns, and we're going through some of the ways that humans can work with elementals. What are some of the other ways, Tanis?
Well, one of them would be to, you know, teach other humans to appreciate nature. You know, go for walks with your children. Instead of, you know, if you're a therapist, instead of being a therapist in an office, why not take your clients for a walk in the woods?
Great idea.
Yeah, in fact, I do some of my organizational meetings in nature with people.
With your corporate clients?
Yeah, my corporate meetings are in nature.
And how does that help them? How do they feel?
Well, because I think that when people get away from the inanimate kind of office spaces where you don't even have windows you can open, and that's even if you've got a window, that when they get away from that and the gray walls and the lack of oxygen and the terrible lighting, out into nature, something in them alters. And so I think that this is what we need to have more retreats for people and organizations.
So if my inner voice is saying, Steve, you need a retreat, you need to take off, should I honor that?
Oh, definitely.
Where's the best place to do that in your estimation in North America?
Definitely.
Where's the best place?
Well, I think follow your inner guidance and see how long you need to go for, because people need sabbaticals. We're not working with organic cycles at all. Organic cycles are following the seasons of spring, summer, winter. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. And people do not do that, and they push for production all year round rather than in the winter taking time to just go inward. That's what nature calls us to do. It wants us to sleep more, dream more, go into silence, go into retreat, go into contemplation, and yet we're feeling driven to produce. So it's going against the natural cycle.
Well, I guess they don't have to pay the rent, those car payments and all of that, too.
And sometimes, however, if we create a space we actually get more thoughts. Like one of the things I like to talk, I do talk called Taking Your Soul to Work, actually. I'm going to be in Boston doing a spiritual conference in March on that topic.
I love that topic.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my new book is called that. That's what my new book is called, Take Your Soul to Work.
We could have you back and we'll just talk about spirit and business.
We could. But one of the things I say to people is that usually we're so full that we haven't got a space to think a new thought. And if we were to go out for a walk in nature for an hour and just let our body, have a run, if you like, often a new thought will come to us, and we'll be more productive when we go back than if we sit at our desk and try to plow through.
All right. Well, that seems to make sense. I think that's part of the creative process that I've read about. I
think so.
Mm-hmm. So you also say we should do things spontaneously, which is interesting. In other words, not to plan so much and so forth.
Yeah, well, the elementals are very spontaneous. They're practical jokers. They bring mischief into our lives. They misplace things on us, so because they don't want us to do something, so they'll misplace something. And they have fun at our expense. And we really need to just lighten up and laugh at it rather than, making a big deal. And also be spontaneous in our own life.
Makes sense to me. Now, in the book, you also talk about some of the elemental guidelines for manifesting. What is their basis for, in a sort of a nutshell, for how we manifest?
Well, they're gifted at manifesting. That's what they do. And basically, they can manifest what they want in our world even. They can create a tree. They can create a plant because of a couple of factors. The first is that they can see the essence of what that being is. And it's like us looking at the soul of someone, Steve, that if we look at the essence of who a person is and we nurture that essence, then we help them to grow into what they can become. And so that's one of the ways that elementals want us to work at manifesting. A second way is that they have no doubt they can do it. They don't say, I think I would like to, have a holiday in Florida this year. And then another part says, but you don't have enough money. You see, they don't have any doubt that they can go to Florida if they want to go to Florida. So we have a desire, but then we cancel it out. So we sabotage ourselves by saying, it's too much money, or, we're not worth it, or we're too stupid, or it's never worked before. Shall I go on?
Well, you're not talking about necessarily becoming a millionaire first, are you? You're just talking about manifesting.
If that was what somebody's goal was, if that was their goal, to become a millionaire, there's no reason why they can't become a millionaire. If it is part of if it's in keeping with their plan for life. Now there's the key.
There's the catch.
I think it has to be in keeping, whatever we're manifesting in life has to be in keeping with our destiny in life.
Now, how do we figure that out?
By really listening to what we're called to do. And if we listen, I think all of us know what that is. And that could be anything. That could be like raising 5 children.
Okay.
That could be being a Mother Teresa. That could be owning a large company. But if we're really honest with ourselves and we listen to what we're called to do, then we can manifest anything. It's when we go against what we're really being called to do that we get ourselves into trouble. And we create misery for others and ourselves.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to mention that Tanis Helliwell, author of Summer with the Leprechauns, also does a number of tours, and coming up in the spring of this year, where you're going to where? Ireland, right?
Ireland, yes.
And that is
I've done tours to sacred sites now for 14 years and taken people all over the world. And this year it's going to be Ireland. Well, of course.
Well, are you going to the place?
We are.
Where all this happened?
We are.
Oh, that
yes,
would be
that now is
fantastic.
a sacred site.
It is? Is it?
Yes, we're going to do 2 tours. One will be a tour of the sacred sites of Ireland, which will include going to Achill Island and seeing the leprechaun haunts. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have another tour from May to 13th to 21st, which will be a walking tour.
So this is the first 2 weeks in May.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The first one's the first 2 weeks of May, and the second one is the third week of May, and it's so we can walk the land and really get in touch with the land again.
And I really highly recommend this book. It's not only a wonderful movie script, but it's also got a lot of great points for working with elementals and also for learning how to manifest, if you want some pointers on that. I would go out and get the book Summer with the Leprechauns, a true story by Tanis Helliwell, and that's Helliwell. And Tanis, I can't say how much I've enjoyed interviewing you, and I hope you can come back again sometime, and we'll talk about some of your other books and wonderful experiences that you've had.
Steve. This has been a real treat.
Well, the time is drawn to a close, I'm sorry to say, so I bid you a great, wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right, I hope we can have you back again sometime.